At the end of an explosive week in the Trump administration, we spoke with Vice President Mike Pence at his home on the grounds of the Naval Observatory here in Washington. We began by asking him about the New York Times op-ed and the more than 24 high-ranking Trump administration officials who have denied writing it. In the past, respectfully, I mean, you suffered when you were lied to by Michael Flynn. I mean, he was fired for lying to you. Do you believe the denials this time?
I do, because I know the men and women who serve with us in this cabinet. But I also do because whoever wrote that editorial and the narrative that comes out of some other writings recently just doesn't know what really happens in this White House. I've seen this president in action. Is he demanding? Yes. Is he a strong leader who expects things done yesterday? Yes. But for someone to say that what we've accomplished in the last 18 months is in spite of this president's leadership just reflects an ignorance about President Trump and about our administration.
One of the claims made in the op-ed is that there'd been discussion of invoking the 25th Amendment to even remove the president from office. Have you ever been part of a conversation about that?
No, never. And why would we be, Margaret? I mean, the truth of the matter is, over the last 8 years, despite what we heard from President Obama on Friday.
And by the time I left office, household income was near its all-time high, and the uninsured rate had hit an all-time low, and wages were rising, and poverty rates were falling. I mention all this just so when you hear how great the economy is doing right now, let's just remember when this recovery started.
I mean, this country was struggling. I mean, it was the weakest economic recovery since the Great Depression, because having inherited a recession, President Obama's answer was to raise taxes, to double the national debt, to increase regulation, to pass Obamacare into law, to stifle American energy.
He says the economic upswing began on his watch.
Well, I know he said that, but I don't think too many Americans noticed it.
You said that there are other writings that you also think are inaccurate here. Bob Woodward had this book that just is about to come out, describing in detail a number of incidents inside the White House, where he basically describes people around the president trying to protect the country from him. What is it that you think is inaccurate in his description?
Well, the only thing that's wrong about that narrative is everything, because it shows a complete misunderstanding of how this White House works. I mean, what President Trump provides for this country every day is strong and decisive leadership in the Oval Office. The narrative that I've picked up in not only this book, but the opinion editorial suggests that things are happening in spite of the president's leadership, and nothing could be further from the truth. I mean, our founders envisioned all executive power be invested in the President of the United States, and the American people should know all the progress that we're making is a result of the fact that President Trump engages in debate. He gets all of the facts, and he's not afraid to make a decision and move forward.
He spoke to 100 people. He has recordings. He has notes to back up these firsthand accounts. I mean, one of the instances was he said that the president was stopped from tweeting about withdrawing U.S. personnel from South Korea because North Korea would view it as an act of war. These are specific instances. You saying they didn't happen?
What that suggests, and what I get from other examples and narratives is that people are managing the president, when in fact what happens in the White House every day, Margaret, is the president invites opinions. He tends to put people around the Resolute desk in the Oval Office who have diverse views, and he invites a vigorous debate over what policies ought to be embraced. Then he makes a decision and we go forward, whether it's foreign policy, domestic policy, whether it's legislation on Capitol Hill.
And that's exactly the kind of advisors?
That's exactly the kind of leadership the American people wanted when they elected President Donald Trump.
But some of the instances here are really specific. The president publicly has mocked Jeff Sessions, but in this book, these are specific instances of disregarding the Commerce Secretary to his face, insulting other cabinet officials. Do you dispute all of these examples?
Well, I would tell you, I know this president has great respect for the men and women who serve in this cabinet, and these accounts are very foreign to me. And I'm just not aware of instances where they've occurred or where they would occur. But look, I want to stipulate that working in the White House is not for everybody. I mean, this president is tough. He's demanding. He wants things yesterday. And I think it's one of the reasons why we've accomplished so much in such a short period of time. I mean, the truth is, I think President Donald Trump is the most accomplished president of my lifetime, and I think already one of the most successful presidents in American history.
Do you think
in
people
our first
should be
2 years.
fired because of this?
Well, I truly believe that that whoever penned this opinion editorial should do the honorable thing and resign. I mean, the truth of the matter is that the opinions that they expressed are not only deceitful and false, but they're also un-American, and they represent an assault on our democracy.
The president has made clear, though, that he doesn't agree with his attorney general on a number of things. And earlier this week, he suggested that Jeff Sessions should not have brought charges against 2 Republican lawmakers who were running for re-election because he thought it could jeopardize the party's control of Congress. I mean, this suggests that the Justice Department should be taking politics and making it a priority.
Well, I think
do you agree with that?
Well, I think there are guidelines in the Department of Justice about not making decisions or taking action that may impact elections, and that's long-standing through numerous administrations. But look, I think one of the things
so
the
Jeff
American
Sessions,
people,
you agree, was
what I want to say, Margaret, is
in his
what the American people appreciate is that this president says what he thinks. He lets people know what he feels about things. But and really, in a very real sense, what you see is what you get with President Donald Trump. And I think that's the reason why he's made the connection that he's made with people all across this country. Because while Washington, D.C. focuses on these various controversies, he's focused on their interests.
That may be frank, that may be what he thinks, but that there's a danger to saying things like that because it suggests that rule of law should be sublimated to politics.
No, this is a president who has strongly affirmed our commitment to the rule of law and to our justice system. I think you need look no further than the hearings this week with Judge Kavanaugh to hear his strong affirmation of an independent judiciary. This president's reflected that throughout the policies of this administration. But look, he's always going to be transparent about how he feels about things. And as I said, there's long-standing Department of Justice guidelines that have to do with making sure that actions are not taken that inadvertently impact the electoral process. But all of that being said, I really do believe the president's candor is one of the reasons why the American people appreciate him.
What are your plans to sit for an interview with Special Counsel Robert Mueller?
You know, we've fully cooperated over the last year.
Has he asked for an
with the
interview
Mueller
with you
investigation? He has not, although we've provided any and all information, and we'll continue to do that.
Then you'd be willing to sit with him if he were to ask?
I would be more than willing to continue to provide any and all support in that. And we have outside counsel that will advise me accordingly. But I just have to tell you, Margaret, it's just not been my focus. And it's not the president's focus. I mean, the reason why we're making the progress that we're making all across this country, rebuilding our military, restoring American strength in the world, seeing the opportunity for peace emerge on the Korean Peninsula. I mean, we're expecting a letter as we speak from Kim Jong-un, communicating again, as he did last week, his reaffirmation of his commitment to denuclearization. No more nuclear tests, no more missile tests. Our hostages are home. And I had the privilege of being there when the remains of 55 fallen Americans in the Korean War were returned to American soil.
So you don't
That's
think
all
the
result of
diplomacy
the
is
president's
stalled,
leadership.
even though the Secretary of State called off his visit?
Well, I actually believe that when the president canceled the meeting a week ago because he wasn't seeing enough progress in denuclearization, that may well have resulted in what Kim Jong-un communicated to a South Korean envoy just last week. And we're anticipating the letter from Kim Jong-un, and all the while our sanctions remain in place.
And do you think you need to cast the deciding vote to confirm Judge Kavanaugh?
Well, we hope not. I think what the American people...
You're not sure where you are on vote count yet?
We'll see where we are. But I have to tell you that despite the embarrassing display by many Senate Democrats in the Judiciary Committee, Judge Brett Kavanaugh showed the intellect, the temperament, the judicial philosophy that I believe should generate broad-based support in the United States Senate. And we have every confidence that Judge Brett Kavanaugh will very soon be Justice Brett Kavanaugh and take his seat on the Supreme Court.
One of the challenges of television interviews is going back and clarifying your words after the cameras have been turned off. We experienced that in our interview with the Vice President Saturday. Here's what we asked at the beginning of the interview about who wrote the anonymous op-ed. So you don't think anyone on your staff, since they're calling themselves a Trump appointee, had anything to do with this?
I wouldn't know, and I really would hope not. And I was heartened to see so many of our colleagues make it very clear that they weren't involved in this in any way. Look, I can tell you, serving alongside this president is an incredible privilege for me, and I know it is for every member of our cabinet and all the senior personnel in our administration. I mean, this is a president who literally gets up every day and works to keep the promises that we made to the American people. And when you look at the record of success over the last 18 months, it's truly been remarkable.
After the interview, the Vice President told us he had misunderstood the question and asked if he could clarify. So we turned the cameras back on. Mr. Vice President, I asked you earlier if anyone on your staff wrote this op-ed. Have you asked your staff?
Oh, well, I thought you were speaking about the administration staff. Let me be very clear. I'm 100% confident that no one on the Vice President's staff was involved in this anonymous editorial. I know my people, Margaret. They get up every day and are dedicated just as much as I am to advancing the President's agenda and supporting everything that President Trump is doing for the people of this country.
And so, you asked them?
Well, honestly, I don't have to ask them because I know them. I know their character. I know their dedication. And I am absolutely confident that no one on the Vice President's staff had anything to do with this. But that being said, whoever this was, they should do the honorable thing and resign.